You guys ready? I'm just now.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. Again, tonight is an informational session on the town meeting warrant. A couple of notes. Mr. Strout cannot join us tonight for family situation. Same with Mr. Esco. And we're informed by Mr. Boyle he has no interest in being here this evening. So we'll walk through the warrant articles tonight. If you have any questions, please ask. And I guess we'll open. We have the scouts here. You guys want to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance? Let's see, we have a number of articles, and Mr. Hutchinson and Mr. Droshain and Mr. Bishop, so we can jump in as we kind of go through this. And I like to open up with, out of respect for CBRSD, if there are any CBRSD representatives who would like to talk about the regional agreement or the budget, if we can bring those, if there's no objection, can we bring those up to the top? Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions about those two particular articles? I'll open by sharing that the CBRSD school committee and an ad hoc committee worked very, very long, hard, and diligent on the new regional agreement, which will be presented to each town in the district and voted on by each town. A little brief history is that this particular agreement is the operating document for all 7 towns in the school district. Laws have changed over the years. The last agreement we had, I believe it was 1993, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? 1993. So having an updated agreement is very helpful because of the laws have changed and now it's in alignment with those particular state laws. So it's a very clear document. This board has voted to approve that document. It went back to Department of Education, or Department of Elementary Secondary Education, or otherwise known as DESE, for the state review. The state review came back with some edits. Those edits were reviewed by the board, and again, we accept those, the document as it is, and the school committee voted to approve those edits, I believe it was Thursday evening, if I'm not mistaken. So the board stands in favor of the regional agreement. And it is a pretty lengthy and detailed document, but if anybody has any questions on that, we can certainly, Ms. Rose. Oh, come on up to the microphone, or, no, they'll bring the mic to you, yeah. We have a white glove service this evening by the scouts.
Cheryl Rose, North Mountain Road. Hi, thanks for having this, by the way. I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions and get answers, hopefully. So you're talking about a document. Can you just tell us this is a new agreement with the school committee, and we're going to vote to approve which article is this, or is this not an article, or what are we talking about exactly here? Well, you said a lot of stuff, Joe, right then, and I have to say, not being so familiar with things, I'm not even sure what you're talking about. So what are you talking about? Yeah,
so the, which article is that in the CBRSD district regional agreement? The agreement is posted on the town website for the details.
But were there some changes since?
Yeah, I would summarize. Yeah, I'll summarize a couple of the changes I'm aware of. Anybody, any of the representatives from CBRSD, certainly feel free to step up and or come forward and help clarify. So, a couple of laws that change were related to how dollars are, or capital is appropriated, capital dollars are appropriated across 7 towns. Not a significant change, that's one. No, it's just a way of calculating, it just hasn't really significantly impacted us at the end of the day. The big one that changed is around how a district can exit the district, right? Such as Cummington, if you will. I think you know the history there. And it is the last article on the warrant. And there's a number of other changes that are relatively, I would suggest, are minor in comparison to the prior document and clarity. Yep, Ms. Rose, can you bring a microphone over to her? Just for the TV audience at home too, so we can pick it up.
I guess what I'm asking, so there's a change in the way a school can exit. What's the major change? I mean, can you describe like what the requirement is that changed or something, just so we have a better idea of what we're talking about again?
Yeah, so for example, one of the state laws that change is how you can vote on capital projects, right? So like the new school, right? So the document made it clear on how the school district will walk through that process. So that's one.
And that will be?
That will be either based upon the school committee's vote, will be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wahconah, is either a popular vote or a district by district vote, right? It's going by state law, so you really can't.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And as far as exiting the district?
I have to look at the details to answer that, but Mr. Wahconah, could you offer any input into that? And for the folks that don't know Mr. Wahconah, he's a Dalton representative on the school committee. Sorry to put you on the spot, but thank you for being here.
That's all right. As far as exiting, I think you're referring to the calculation of OPEB.
Yes.
That's the major change. When somebody exits the district, they have to pay what they owe the district for the OPEB liability. Other post-employment benefits, and we have the both in the town and in the district. This is primarily medical insurance for retirees, primarily.
Okay, so for previous retirees, you're exiting, but the teachers, while you were part of it, and you still have to continue to pay, because we're all continuing to pay for these retired
That's right,
people's
that's
benefits.
correct.
Thank you.
There was nothing in the prior agreement. This one has something. The other substantive change was if a town has to leave their school, for example, Beckett, if Beckett were to leave their school because of an emergency or renovation or something to that effect, the district could not make them pay for capital costs of their school as well as the school that they're in temporarily. So that was a source of, that was a problem about 15 years ago, and that's been rectified in the new agreement. The calculation of capital, calculation of transportation, calculation of the operating funds is all the same. A lot of wording changes, just making it cleaner. A lot of obsolete language gone. I guess the important thing is that it's now an official document with the state if we approve it. So that's what it is.
Yeah. And I think one of the other important changes in this document is in an agreement within the document to review this regional agreement every 5 years at minimum, and more often if law changes. So it keeps all the 7 towns in the same understanding and the same page as the agreement. So again, the board has supported the agreement to move forward. Any other questions on the regional agreement? Any questions on the CBRSD budget? And that's on our website too, Ms. Hutchinson?
We will get the budget up on the website. Right now, the agreement is just up on the website.
All right, thank you.
Oh, the budget is also was distributed to every household in the town report. Looks like that. You all should have gotten one on because of the Boy Scouts. Thank you again. You're running this town.
Great. Thank you for that discussion around CBRSD, and we'll move to article number 1.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Logan, yep. Yes. Yep. Okay. And just a reminder, this evening is for educational informational. It's not to debate any topics at all. We'll hold debate until the town meeting, but it's for informational education. Mr. Logan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Todd Logan. I'm the lucky guy who put together this petition. And what I'd like to do briefly is just cover the motion and explanation, or the explanation for the motion. I'll read the motion really quickly. Did everybody get a copy of the motion and explanation for Article 1? Okay. So I'll just read the motion really quick so everybody knows what we're talking about. I move that the town amend current regulations for the town of Dalton by adding the following sidewalk materials specification into all appropriate sections. For example, section 501-19, curbing and sidewalks. Quote, the town of Dalton, its highway department, and all contractors working under the town's direction shall utilize cement concrete pavement or a material with equivalent service life and appearance rather than less durable materials such as bituminous asphalt as the specified standard building material for all permanent public sidewalk repairs, replacements, and new installations in all zones of the town. Dalton Sidewalk Work Standard shall conform to the requirements of subsection 701 of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Transportation Standard Specifications for all highways and bridges, 2022 edition, or any amendment thereof, addition thereto, or substitution therefore. So that's the motion that will be made next Monday. As for the explanation. Oh, dead mouse. Hold on. Oh, is that what it helps? Oh, there we go. Give it just a second. All the sidewalks. There we go. So now I'm just going to read verbatim, pretty much, what's on this sheet, but with some multimedia support on the screen. A yes vote authorized for this Article 1. A yes vote authorizes a change to Dalton sidewalk regulations to specify cement concrete as the town's standard sidewalk material. Currently, Dalton's regulations do not specify cement concrete as the town's standard. A no vote maintains the status quo and supports proposals made by the town to use bituminous asphalt for extended sections of new sidewalk and to replace sections of existing damaged concrete sidewalk with asphalt. Objectives of the town's proposals include saving the town money in the short run and potentially accelerating sidewalk repairs. However, there are good reasons why establishing a cement concrete sidewalk standard in Dalton will benefit our town. Cement sidewalks will help preserve Dalton's character and charm. Nearly 90% of Dalton's 16 miles of sidewalks are currently cement concrete, while just over 10% are asphalt. Replacing a significant number of damaged cement concrete sidewalks in Dalton with asphalt will change the existing classic New England look and feel of our town. A yes vote for the cement concrete standard will aim to better preserve Dalton's character and charm. What does Mass DOT recommend? 2018 Mass DOT guidelines specify cement concrete as the preferred surface material for sidewalk construction in Massachusetts because of its durability. Per 2021 Executive Order 594, Mass DOT also now utilizes lower carbon concrete, enhancing greater environmental sustainability over the total service life cycle of cement sidewalks. What about costs? This is the hot one. Initial costs of cement sidewalks are higher than asphalt. However, when long-term costs are considered, cement concrete sidewalks will actually save the town money over time, as much as 35% over the next 25 to 50 years. It is a pretty long recovery there. These savings result from the cement concrete having twice the durability of asphalt and requiring less maintenance. In 2023, Dalton budgeted $11,000 for sidewalk repairs, an annual amount insufficient to address 16 miles of sidewalk. Oh, that's not on the screen, but it's in your handout. Is there an impact on home values? Cement sidewalks do add curb appeal to neighborhoods, and according to Redfin Real Estate, higher walkability scores correlate directly with higher home values. And you can see here, this is actually Carson, and there's these houses are directly across the street from each other. One of them has concrete, the other has asphalt. What is the impact, what impact is there on health? Oh, sorry, I missed one. Oh, what about places where asphalt might be a better option? A concrete standard does not prohibit use of asphalt or other sidewalk materials in Dalton. If the Highway Department believes an exception needs to be made for a new sidewalk installation or repair, a variance can be requested that triggers public discussion about that project. Additionally, for short-term sidewalk repairs, the use of asphalt would not require a variance. And here you can see, this is in front of the school, in front of Craneville. You can see on one side there's fairly new asphalt, actually. Looks pretty good. And the much, much older concrete on the other side. What impact is there on health and safety? Cement sidewalks better support Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility standards better than asphalt sidewalks. And according to government research, cement concrete surfaces have 4 times the reflective brightness, in other words, better visibility in low light conditions than asphalt, reducing potential trip hazard risks. This is on Main Street. These are also right across the street from each other on Main. What do Dalton residents think? This is a new piece. In the last 2 months, I've spoken to dozens of people around Dalton about the sidewalk petition. So far, there have been a few skeptics, but most folks think having cement concrete as our sidewalk standard is a good idea. In fact, 3 of Dalton's committees have offered unanimous votes of support for the petition at recent meetings. These include the Dalton Historical Commission, the Dalton ADA Committee, and the Green Dalton Committee. Most members of these committees asked questions and had a lot to say. But a member of one committee remained quiet. So I asked, thank you for voting to support the petition. Can you share why? And he replied, it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. And if you can hang out right there, just in case there's any questions. Any questions for the petition? Stay right there, yeah, stay right there with the microphone, yeah.
Okay, Maureen Mitchell, I have a general question. How many signatures does it take to put an article on the, into the town meeting?
For the town warrant, it only takes 10, which is kind of surprisingly low. In my case, I was able to get 22 in 24 hours.
And is the public who those 10 or 22 people would be? Is there a conflict of interest somewhere?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is it public who those 22 people might be?
Yes.
I'm thinking in reference to conflict of interest.
Yes, it is public. It's a matter of public record. You can get it from the clerk's office or I can get you a copy.
Now, if a utility needs to come through and disturb or destroy, whose responsibility is to make that repair?
Maybe Bud could answer that. He would probably know better than me.
So is it up to the contractor how to make the repair, or does it have to match what was there? Right. And in inclement weather, you can't do concrete, am I correct? Is it a shortened time to make repair? Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud.
Ms. Rose, one more. Don't go too far with that mic. Coming back across. Yeah, there you go. Oh, good, Ms. Rose. Go, Charles. Yeah, he's right behind you with the microphone.
Okay. Couple things. One is I saw the state uses low carbon cement, and I don't see anything in our bylaw requiring that. So I have an environmental concern that we would look for the less expensive option, which wouldn't be the low carbon, which would actually be worse environmentally. That's my first question.
Okay. Do you want me to take that one first or wait till you ask your second one?
Oh, me.
Okay. Yeah.
You're looking back there.
Or do you want to ask your second one? Okay.
Answer that.
Yeah, so actually, what's interesting about that is that even our current standards, our current ones unchanged, if we were to follow them, and contractors that the town hires were to follow them, their update, it says the same language of, or updated standards over time. This was like in the 70s when the first thing was written. It actually says if it's been updated, you need to follow it. Well, guess what? The new standards that from Mass DOT are to use lower carbon, and the executive order I mentioned that was under the Baker administration said you got to change this, and so they started using lower carbon concrete. So if we're supposed to follow Mass DOT, then we're supposed to do that as well. That's written in. It's already there.
Will we? I mean, it doesn't explicitly state it, so, just wondering, like, how that's going to play out when you start looking at the cost. Will we? Or is it not decided? Okay, so we're not definitely going to use the low-carbon cement.
Well, actually, since Bud has a mic, if you could stick with Bud for a second, I just want to ask him, Bud, didn't we use Berkshire Concrete for the thing you did on Field?
Yes.
Okay, they're lower carbon concrete. They're the same standard. So we actually did it. Bud just did it. He used lower carbon concrete on Field.
Okay, well, I may offer that amendment at the town meeting to make that explicitly required, just so you know, because I think it needs to be if that's going to be the case. I also am this does not permit any kind of, because we're talking about a higher cost for the concrete, and I saw the graph, but I wasn't looking at the amounts of dollars we're talking about, I'm sorry. So, it's hard to know, oh yeah, it's $5 more, it's $100,000 more, I don't know. That, Main Street is one thing, and, my street is something else. You're saying concrete has to be everywhere. If it's in the new bylaw, that's how we're going to go. I'm just pointing out that you don't have any room for that decision to be made just because of cost. I'm just thinking for cost for people, because, people are sensitive about their taxes.
Right. So this has been a hot topic of conversation, and what I would say is that the way it's written now, there are a couple of loopholes, so be aware of that, for asphalt to be used. So it can be used for repairs, emergency situations, temporary installations. The question of Orchard Road is a good example. It's a huge project. That's not something small and temporary, right? So in a case like Orchard Road, what this is asking the highway department to do is just to come to the town and say, can we do this? Can we use asphalt? It's going to cost half as much or 3/4 as much, whatever. It's going to cost less. We can get it done faster. Can we do it? Then there's a public hearing and it's decided. So that's how that mechanism is proposed to work in a situation like that. But outside of that, there are tons of situations where asphalt could still be used.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for loopholes, but I just wonder, what we're saying here, and how things are going to work out. So another question is, on my street, only one side has a sidewalk,
right.
And that's in a lot of towns. And I noticed, since I had spoken to you about this, full disclosure, when I looked on Main Street, which I don't typically walk down, I noticed it was concrete on one side and it's asphalt on the other. And I wondered about the idea of just having sidewalks on one side. Now, maybe on Main Street that's not good, but actually if you have safe sidewalks, I mean, it's Walker Street in Lenox has a sidewalk on
right.
one side. That's a pretty busy road, and it has a sidewalk on one side. You cross and you go on the sidewalk that is.
I'm going to ask a little clarity of this particular article just for the discussion, is that if the article passes, it will be an advisory to the planning board, in which correct? Advisory to planning board?
Advisory to the town.
To the town, and then it will be taken into consideration, have public hearings, and get into more detail, and then kind of massage it and
Right.
things of that nature, and then take it through its process. So even if it passes, it's not automatically the new bylaw. It needs to go through another process.
And
Yeah.
Joe, isn't it also true that it's going to have to be reviewed by the Attorney General's office too, I think? Isn't that another?
I don't know that step,
Okay.
but I believe
So
you're correct.
there may be multiple reviews.
Yeah, it's a start of a long process
I
for
thought those get
consideration, but at
reviewed
least,
before they're on the warrant. to make
Yeah.
sure I think articles get reviewed before they're allowed to be on the warrant, maybe? Okay, well, that's a separate topic. That's a separate topic.
We can talk about that
Another
after.
thing was, you mentioned 16 miles of sidewalk, is that what you said? So how much do we usually replace in a year? How many miles of sidewalk or whatever in a year? Like, is there a plan to just replace all the sidewalks with concrete?
No,
Or is this as they get
It's not our
repaired?
plan to replace all the sidewalks, and the reason being is because we had street scan that told us we have significant road issues as well. So the question to the voters is going to be, just this article, do you want concrete or do you want the asphalt, right?
Okay.
And then taking that and saying, okay, how much do we as a town want to invest in repairing sidewalks? And
That's-
is there going to be a stabilization fund for that? Is there going to be a strategy around that?
Right.
So there's a
Like a budget,
longer...
for each year, there's a budget. It's not
Yeah,
just
there's a
like,
much
oh,
longer process to go through. We're not going to replace all the sidewalks in town, et cetera, et cetera. It's not affordable, and when you think of the priorities, is it streets, is it sidewalks, is it public safety? There's a big, discussion, but maybe it just rolls into, we have a stabilization fund, and I'll turn to Mr. Joe Sheen and then think about, his committee as well.
He's smiling over there.
And
so-
just the overall strategy about, the challenges and the opportunities, right? So, but the first part is this particular petition, and I think that everybody here, up here, and our town clerk welcomes petitions from citizens. That's part of democracy. So, I hope that helped.
Henry?
Rose, North Mountain Road, thank you for the work you've done on this. Do you have an estimate on how much more this will cost the average homeowner in their taxes during those first 10 years?
No, because we don't have a budget yet.
If we were to estimate 16 miles of sidewalk, it was to go to concrete, was the math we were using, like 100,000? What's the number? You got the number? Go ahead, Mr. Joshine. Yeah.
To replace all of the sidewalks that are presently seated in the town, it's roughly around $7 million to replace them. It's a little higher than that. Looking over a 25-year, quote, lifespan of a sidewalk, with which I would disagree to some degree about that, it would be approximately $150,000 a year. That can be garnered from multiple places. I'm not sure how we would go about setting up a stabilization fund if that was desired. We, each year, from free cash, we do put money into our stabilization accounts. So that's certainly an avenue that can be taken. We can also do a thing called raise and appropriate, and that's generally done through the budgetary process. That when you put the money aside, the select board sits down and they decide how much that they would like to spend, and then they come over to the budgets come over to the finance committee, and we take a look at it and we try to decide how we are going to present it to the voters and the taxpayers of the town. And then, of course, ultimately, the taxpayers and the voters in the town of Dalton are the people that make the ultimate decision. And that is something that's very important to understand. The finance committee doesn't make your decision for you. The select board doesn't make your decision. You make your decisions. And that's what separates us from some pretty ugly places in this great world of ours. I do happen to have some questions when it comes down to the sidewalk issue. First off, when it comes to Portland cement concrete, how much of any of the damaged sidewalk, if we indeed find it, how much of that material is recycled back into sidewalks?
I can answer that because I looked into that if you'd like. But I'd also like to comment really quickly on Henry's question if I could. I think what's being indicated here is that we have a long way to go to understand what because yes, $7 million if we did all of it in that span of time, but how much do we really need? We don't need to do High Street, I mean, there's a lot that we don't need to do. So it's a question of priority and a question of selecting, some sort of study, maybe like the road study that we've done that says, well, there's a lot of traffic on this sidewalk and it's in terrible shape. Maybe we should fix that first. So, it's a lot of exploration, I think, before we can conclude absolutely what the increase would be. So, but to answer the recycling, Not in Massachusetts. In other places, yes. But here in Springfield, there's a couple of places that their idea of recycling is simply grind up and use for other projects. It's like fill. I mean, it's not turned back into, so the real lower impact or more sustainable way to do it is to find a replacement for the Portland cement. And that's what everybody's looking at. There's a couple new companies that have come out with a completely new type of, besides fly ash, which is from coal plants. That's what they use right now as filler to make it more green, ironically, but lower carbon. But there's a whole new technologies happening, and at the Mass DOT, at least, the people that I talked to in research and development there said the costs are actually coming down fast for those. So there is hope. There is hope. Anyway.
Well, then the next question, it's along the same line. When it comes to bituminous or asphalt sidewalks, how much of those are recycled back into sidewalks? And just to let you know, I know the answer to that question.
Yeah, a lot. No, there's different technologies for it. They have hot in place and cold in place, and the cold in place is really green, and it's really it's 100%.
When it comes down to asphalt, it's actually required by the Federal Highway Administration that 25% of the material that is used for any portion of asphalt concrete be used to produce sidewalks, roadways, or driveway aprons. Also, if you keep in mind when it comes to asphalt, like Bud's doing a great job at, it's a thing called mill and fill. You can mill these sidewalks down, and you can replace the top 1-inch surface of that and make a brand new sidewalk, recycling the piece that's underneath it as well.
Right.
So many of these things, the maintenance of these sidewalks can be done at a far lower cost, making our $150,000 a year go much farther. So we need to, when it comes down to this kind of thing, we need to go carefully. Because if we don't go carefully, an all-encompassing statement can back ourselves into a corner that we may not be able to get out of, and suddenly we're wondering where are we going to have the funds to do these great, and they're great projects. I like the concrete idea. It's not a bad one. But I've looked into mud jacking of sidewalks to level them. I've looked at, they use it's like a foam product that raises them. And just to kind of preface all of this, I'm the chair of the Traffic Commission, and we have oversight of the Complete Streets program. Complete Streets program is put forth by I believe MassDOT, as I recall. I have to remember because we haven't worked a lot with it of late. And back in 2016, a study was put together by Berkshire County Regional Planning Commission. And in that, they gave us a kind of a roadmap of how to fix our sidewalks and how to prioritize our sidewalks. Didn't tell us whether we had to use bituminous or not. It didn't give us that. But my kind of spin on it, from being in the highway for 28 years and public service for almost 40 now, it's a case-by-case basis. And if we can somehow fit some language into a case-by-case basis, I would find it to be far more palatable than coming in and just saying, you're going to use this. And especially considering all the things that Todd has come up with tonight and explained to us the changes that are taking place. Just like technology, things are changing. Things are turning green. Whether it's slow or it's fast, it's changing regardless. And as long as it's all pointed in that direction, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Rose, if you get a microphone over there, he's right next to you, to your left.
So, but I just have a thought cross my mind. If there's a totally asphalt sidewalk, because I'm thinking about this from the environmental standpoint, because of course if you can reuse and recycle something in place, that's better than ripping it out and starting over. say there's a damaged area, because in my mind, I'm thinking, say there's a damaged area of asphalt. If you replace with asphalt or grind and repair, you fix that section, but if you're going to do concrete, you're not going to like then just do like 5 squares of concrete and leave the rest asphalt. Now we're talking, well, now we got to just do that whole street or section or something. Am I wrong, or would you just be doing little sections of concrete filling in the problems?
You're right. I would stick with asphalt in that situation.
Yeah, so like what percentage of it, that's what I'm thinking, what percentage of a whole sidewalk needs to be a problem before you just rip the whole thing up and change it to concrete? That's what I'm thinking in my mind, how it doesn't address that sort of issue.
If there's no other questions, we're going to move to our next article. We've got a whole list of things. This is an important topic.
Thanks.
Mr. Logan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And
All
thank
right.
you for the discussion, everyone. And before we move along, Tom and I were just kind of prioritizing the list here, but before we move along, I always like to go to the audience and say, is there any article that's top of mind for anyone that you want to know more about this evening, making sure we talk about that? Because I always feel bad if somebody's waiting for something, they're here for 2 hours, and it's like a 5-minute question, so I always kind of like want to, anyone? All right, so we're just going to dive right in, all right? So we were thinking, Mr. Bishop, that we're going to go to Article 4, if that's okay? And Tom, you want to guide us through that?
Sure. Article 4 funds the town operating budget. This is the major article that keeps the town going. And the details of it are in the this little pamphlet that came out in the town report, articles for the annual town meeting, May 6, 2024, and the report of the Finance Committee for fiscal year 2025. And just over halfway through, there's a summary by department of all the money that is being proposed to be spent in fiscal year 2025. So this covers the general government functions, it covers public safety, public works, education. Actually, we separate out the Central Berkshire budget later on in the warrant. It covers health and human services, culture and recreation, all the debt service, all the personnel benefits. All of that is in the town operating budget. And again, you can see those in that pamphlet that came with your town report. That budget is going up about 8% from what it was last year. It sounds like a lot. It is a lot. The majority of that is coming from increases in insurance and schools and other things that the town does not have direct control over. So the actual town increase is a little under 4%. Everything else, we're at the mercy of outside forces. So last year, that part of the budget went up 10%. So we're going in the right direction. It's not as low as we'd necessarily like to see, but I think both the Select Board and the Finance Committee did a great job this year of trimming away where they could. And I think we're on a good path forward to being ever more careful in what we approve at this level for town meeting to consider for funding.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Mr. Joshi, anything to add?
Well, I don't necessarily have a lot to add to this. As you may read in my Finance Committee report, it was a rather interesting year. This year we had a great piece of information to work with. We were able to trim back some budgets. I think some of our department heads were able to see where they were able to either reallocate funds, so they were far more useful. It's been a difficult couple of years, mainly because we've been attempting to catch up to many years of kind of keeping our belts extremely tight. And when I say tight, we were going through years where our town employees, including our police and highway departments, were taking 0% pay increases, 0 COLAs and 0 steps. So, and unfortunately, we've kind of, over time, have been kind of backed into a corner a little bit, in that not having the ability to not only get, but retain personnel within the town. So we've had to make some moves, and we've had to, our town manager's been good, been doing a good job in getting information to us so that we can see how our employees are being compensated and if they're in the right places where they need to be. There's still some things, there's still a lot of work to be done, but hopefully in the next, we've got a couple of plans that may help this year. We're not sure where they're going to land. It's not top secret. It's actually, we're looking at a different way of approaching a couple of budgets that we have to get them reined in better. So it's, and one of them happens to be voc ed. Voc ed's kind of, it's a really big budget, and we make a rather educated guess. Our school district is kind enough to get as much information to us in April, but unfortunately, because of deadlines and when students choose not to go to vocational education schools, suddenly we've budgeted for something that's not being used. So, of course, that raises the budget, and it ends up on raise and appropriate, which is your tax bill. So hopefully, we're looking at some plans of maybe stemming the tide of that, but we've got to make some decisions, especially the select board will have to make some decisions as to how they can go forward and maybe get that reined in. It looks like it might happen in September. So, but other than that, it was a tough year. Finance Committee spent a lot of hours working on this, and we started early this year, something we haven't done in so many years. We started, when was it? Our first planning started in January or December?
I think it's December.
Yeah, we
started actually in the fall with that strategy committee,
Yeah.
kind of thinking through it, so, yeah.
Yeah,
December,
so after I attended a finance association meeting, I found that many towns begin their budgetary process long about November, December. They begin the planning process, and then they have a plan set by January. And generally, the goal is to have the information in front of the finance committee by middle of February. We meet pretty much every other week until the end of March. So it's a pretty big process, but we get through it. Thanks to the committee and all the people that work on getting this information to us. Are there any questions?
Well, let's just get a microphone. Let's hold for a microphone, please, and then...
How much money, I'm just trying to connect the dots here. How much money is allocated to sidewalk maintenance in 25?
Let me take a look.
Thank you. So there's a number like $11,000 is floating around town that just wanted to confirm if that's...
Yeah, I do this many times during the process. So
Oh.
just bear with me, everyone.
You don't have them memorized?
All right. There it is. I believe it was $11,000 is what it was. We have road material repairs. Generally, that, I believe, Bud, that's what we use many times to repair sidewalks. Yeah, that road materials is budgeted at $60,000, and that Bud manages to make that go a lot longer than it was. Back when I started on the finance committee, that was somewhere, and I started along about 1995. That budget was somewhere around $5,000. We're at $60,000, and it's my opinion. substantially short from what it really should be. That should be closer to $100,000, my opinion. That's just one lonely member of a finance committee. That's not the entire committee's feeling. That's just my own. Was I able to answer that for you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you again to the Scouts for running around with mics. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bill, I'd like to ask a question, and again, you may know it or not, but I know there's transfers, but could you tell us how much money are in the various stabilization funds, reserve funds, free cash, going into this next budget year?
That's up to date, right? Yeah, okay. All right, for our stabilization funds, general stabilization has $927,439. Capital stabilization is $1,047,983. Litigation stabilization is $479,889. Sewer stabilization is $691,451. And I don't happen to have a total of all of the stabilizations. Now, when it comes down to stabilization, if we move money from them, it does take a 2/3 majority at an annual or special town meeting to move money from any of those stabilization accounts. So you kind of have to, matter of fact, one of the articles does just that for us. But we do indeed have healthy stabilization in the town. That's actually produces I guess a healthy town, so that if we go into borrowing or anything of that nature, it gives us a good good look and lower interest rates when needed. Our borrowing is at minimum this year. We do have some, but it's a small amount. But the town of Dalton uses a mix of stabilization, free cash, and borrowing to kind of make things happen. And what that does is it can help reduce the overall tax rate. It kind of extends some of the bigger expenses, extends it out over a longer period of time, hence lowering the tax rate. Yes. Oh God, where are we with free cash? 2.4. Okay. We're presently at $2.4 million. You're welcome. Yes.
It would be helpful if I heard a general statement of, what is the liquidity of the town? What is our debt? What are the big ticket items we anticipate having to pay for in the future, such as daylighting of Walker Brook, such as the sewer repair that I keep hearing about? That kind of thing would be very helpful to hear. Could you elaborate on that?
I can kind of rattle off the short list and have Mr. Hutchinson and Mr. Droshi and Mr. Bishop add or correct my statement here. But the ones I'm paying attention to at the moment is the Walker Brook engineering and redesign and build. So what we're looking at for current prices there is around $5 million with a 25%. Our coverage would be a 25% match on the grant. So we're looking for grant dollars on that. So you can think of that as almost $1 million. Then you look at the new sewer line down Dalton Division Road that we have support for engineering, and that will come back to town meeting for capital investment down the road. I believe that number there is anywhere from $700,000 to $1 million, if I'm not mistaken.
It's more than that.
It's more than $1 million? And that won't happen until Dalton Division is reconstructed, which I think right now, based upon the latest Mass DOT and Berkshire Regional Plan and TIP program, is 27, 28. I'm going to look at Bud. Is that kind of right? 29? Okay, 29. So it's a few years out for that. And I think in general, looking at our roads and whether or not we want to increase our stabilization programs to help with more road conditions and things like that, or road reconstruction. We got $1 million grant, which we should all celebrate, for Orchard Road, so that's helpful. So between Walker Brook, the Dalton Division Road sewer line. Anything else, Mr. Hutchinson, that's top of mind?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have all my capital planning sheets here for this town budget review, but I'll have those next week, and I can give them, if you shoot me an email, I can get you some of my thoughts on that.
And we do have a draft, kind of, to Ms. Hutchinson's point, a draft kind of 5-year projection on major capital needs of the town, for sure. And then we don't know yet what our ADA needs. We have a very strong ADA committee. We have a very strong group looking at our capital investments from infrastructure as far as buildings, if you will, and things of that nature. Mr. Rose.
On the specifics of the Dalton Division Road sewer line, the homeowners there purchased their homes with septic. Why do we owe them sewer lines?
Well, we haven't yet. We, as a select board, are supporting the engineering to know what the cost is, and that cost is going to come back to the town. We funded that cost, Mr. Bishop, I believe through ARPA dollars. Right, so we took ARPA dollars to do the engineering of that. There is movement in the state. I don't know when it's going to come into effect, but I know it's already touching Cape Cod around removing septic from homes in general. But that's a longer story, longer strategy conversation. But this cost will come to the voters. To your point, is that it is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Droshine, 14 homes on that stretch, or 16?
I think it's 16.
16 homes?
It's about that. We're not sure that all of those would sign on.
And we're also trying to strategically connect with Pittsfield as well on this need too, because there'd be value for their residents on that side, Dalton Division, to also participate in this. So to be determined, we're a little bit far out. So again, 29-30, so think 27-28 for town meeting capital improvement on that particular project.
I'd like to comment that I don't think we owe those homeowners the sewer line, and I intend to vote no on that.
Yep.
And I'd like to comment regarding the Cape. The Cape has special problems with water and eutrophication that are different than our problems here. I'd like to add, and I've mentioned this in previous meetings, when it comes to the budget for the town manager's office, could you please break that out to how much the town manager is being paid and how much the administrator is being paid?
Mm-hmm. So town manager, I believe it's at 123 right now?
123.7.
123.7, and we're in the middle of contract negotiations for the next term on the agreement. And the assistant is... Okay.
And
36 is full-time. If we do the... Do you know what the salary comes out to be, Tom?
Yeah, just 1 second. I actually do have that right here.
And also, how much of the increase in that department was to the assistant, and how much was to the manager, so that we can see that?
And which other positions is this for? Dr. Rose?
How much of the increase in that department went to each individual? It was an increase of about, I believe, 10K. Was that increase shared equally between the two? Was it more towards one individual than the other?
Well, we have
the increase was $11,000 in that department.
Yeah, we have the list of employees in the town manager's office that Mr. Hutchinson will read.
Yes.
What are the positions?
The town manager, and I'm sorry, this says 123.9. The executive assistant making 48.9, an interdepartmental clerk currently at very part-time, 12 hours a week at just a little over $8,000.
Okay. I'd suggest in future accounting that it be broken down, and I would ask the same for any department that it be broken down. What's the plan with Old Dalton High, and is that going to cost us anything to fix the land that's there? Is there any plan happening with that?
The old Dalton High, that land there, so by the senior center, so we're all clear on the land we're talking about. A, we need to fix the Walker Brook, and we need to go through the flood mitigation. And I believe the history is prior to my arrival, Mr. Bishop, you can add to this for sure, is that in 2015, I believe, was the town vote? To take down the old Dalton High and then to build single-family homes in those lots. That's the plan right now. We have no engineering of that plan, nothing else. I think folks have seen in the news that there was a discussion around the select board because we had Berkshire Regional Planning Commission come in and look at that land and come up with other alternative ideas and solutions. We are not pivoting away from the 2015. That will require another town vote. If at any time we decide to do something different, we're not going to do it as a select board. It's going to come to town meeting, town vote. We all know that things have changed since 2015, the housing crisis, et cetera, affordability of homes or housing affordability. What are the options in that particular land? Again, no decisions made. We're sticking right now at the 2015, but the first thing we need to do before we do anything else is a Walker Brook flood mitigation, period, hard stop. Once that is done, then we can move forward with anything else in that, the housing development on that land.
I'd like to say that I wouldn't have voted for taking down the high school unless what you said will remain true, and I'm glad to hear that would require a vote of the town. What's the cost of fixing Walker Brook, and what's that going to cost the average homeowner?
The current cost that we have is $5 million. We're going after grant dollars in which the town will have to basically match 25% of that $5 million, so we can just do the math of that, north of $1 million to get into the fixing game, if you will. Not the fixing game, but the fix of Walker Brook. Fixing game sounds a little back behind the scenes political, but no, the fixing of Walker Brook flood mitigation situation.
What does $1.25 million mean to the average homeowner per year?
I don't know the math.
Do you know what that means?
I'm
Do you know what that means?
That we'd have to feed that. What would happen is we would have to feed that into our tables. This here is a worksheet that we use for those levels of calculations, and there's formulas within that worksheet that kind of give us the information back, and that information hasn't, I don't think Tom's had an opportunity to plug that in and look.
No, and presumably we would borrow that money, and it would depend on how we borrowed it, for what term it was, and what the rates were when we borrowed it, for the total cost.
What is our total debt right now? What is our total debt right now?
I don't have that figure with me.
When you can, I would like to hear that. And then the sewer leak, the cost of the leak in the sewer.
Say that one more time. I didn't hear that.
There's a communication between, I can't remember the details, but there's a leak in the sewer system that I keep hearing about year after year.
Oh, that's the water infiltration analysis that was completed, right? So, yes, so Ms. Hutchinson and Mr. Bishop?
Yeah, we're fixing it now. It's an ongoing project. We're hoping to wrap up fairly soon, as far as I know. We're I'd say well over halfway done, and we're lining some areas, replacing some manholes, manhole covers, whatever needs to be done that was found during the analysis. That's moving forward as planned, and it's going pretty smoothly.
Okay. And there was a question in the back. Sorry, Dr. Rose. Tony?
Just a comment.
There you go.
I appreciate the long-term view in terms of capital expenditures, and just jumping ahead in terms of the school budget. I would imagine there'd be capital expenditures there too, what with Nessicus coming on 15, 20 years or what have you. Is that also going to be considered? I would hope the select board, or are there any projected capital expenditures for the school district?
For the school district?
Not this year, but next year, or 2 years, or 3 years out?
Nothing has come before the board at this moment. However, to your question, last year, the school committee voted to leverage rural aid at a level, I believe, was $100,000 to reconstruct some parts of this particular school to house a preschool, which is also in support of a early education cooperative education development plan between students here at Wahconah and BCC for early childhood education. So that, it was a decent investment. But the question I asked was, should that $100,000 be placed towards any other capital? And there was nothing on the list at that time that would shift that funding around or prioritize that. So, but nothing else I've seen, Tony, at this point. So, but. Yes, sir, Dave. Can we have another microphone? Where did it go? There it is.
What does Walker Brook ultimately look like? You're going to daylight it, or are you going to dig another hole and have drainage put in? And what was that plan based on? You're saying $5 million to do Walker Brook?
Yeah, we were presented with, I believe it was 4 options on that engineering study, and then daylighting was not one of the options we selected because of the commitment to look at maximizing that for the houses. So it's going to be under level drainage, new drainage coming through that whole area.
Thanks.
60-inch pipe that's going to go down.
Jeez. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next. Yes.
Couple things. Thank you. I'm glad to hear we're going after some big money for fixing that issue with Walker Brook, and I'm interested to know if, other than the very small grants that the Open Space and Recreation Committee have gotten, did our town get any grants this year? Did we go after any monies for things we were doing this year, this past year?
There's significant grants this year.
Great. I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, significant grants. $1 million for Orchard Road, and I believe it was $130,000 or $140,000 in the police department, or some number of that nature.
Yeah, a total of about $1.5 million this year.
It's in.
We do.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Okay. We go to the next article? That's my list, Tom. We were going to, so 5, 6, and 7 had to do with Berkshire Regional School District. Nobody had questions on the budget, so we're going to skip those. 8 and 9, I think, are self-explanatory. We circled 10. So, right, Mr. Richardson?
Yes. 10 is the Chapter 90 article, and it's an article that is on the warrant every year. This year, it looks a little bit different because we got an additional amount of money for this fiscal year, which has to be approved and authorized. So it's split sort of into 2 parts. There's $120,000 that the town is accepting and authorizing for expenditure in FY24, and then there's another figure for the next fiscal year 25. I just wanted to mention that because it's written a little bit differently than it usually is, with 2 different fiscal years being combined, because we've already gotten the money for this fiscal year.
Any questions on 10? Okay, seeing none.
Chapter 90 is transportation money, so it's DPW.
In the Chapter 90, I think just, sorry if you said it, I was multitasking here, responding to somebody. Chapter 90 went up a little bit because of the millionaire's tax, correct?
Yes, that's the fiscal year 24 part of it. We got $120,000 in Dalton, which is more than half of our usual Chapter 90 money. So our Chapter 90 went up more than 50% because of that fair share tax.
Any questions on Article 10? Well, let's look at the microphone first, and just so the folks at home can hear us.
Back to Article 8, just real quickly. Can you distinguish between free cash and the reserve fund? What is the difference, and why are you moving the money there? Article 8, I'm sorry. What is the difference between, what is the difference from free cash and the reserve fund, and why are you moving money, the $60,000 there?
The reserve fund is actually set aside. It's the only fund that the Finance Committee has any real control other than our yearly budget, and that's not very big, but at any rate, that's the only account or budget that we have any level of control over. And that money is used for, it's used to do unforeseen and unexpected things throughout the year. From time to time, we'll have, for instance, one year we had postage that overran. And it turned out we had it for the town clerks, and needed money for the town clerk's office. Or an insurance policy runs short. Or one year we actually almost ran out of paper, and we had to fund that budget through the reserve fund. So the Finance Committee meets on the second Wednesday of every month. After generally May, I kind of give everybody a little bit of a rest and to take a little bit of the summer off. So, but generally every month we have an opportunity to take a look at different things that are taking place. One of the things with the Modernization Act, we don't use anywhere near as much reserve fund as we used to. With the Modernization Act, it allows us to move money within the budgets, and that helps us kind of mitigate costs that go on raise and appropriate. So that helps keep our funds more balanced, and gives us the opportunity to keep from having to increase taxes when it comes down to that.
Can you explain what free cash is?
Well, free cash is a little bit different animal. Generally, with free cash, we make an attempt to keep a rough amount of free cash, along around a little over $800,000 in free cash, in case of, that's kind of a case of unforeseen things as well. But the taxpayers actually control that. They actually can make their decisions on using that. Matter of fact, a few years ago, we had a sewer main break underneath the Housatonic Street Bridge, and we had to come back for a special town meeting. That was the year of the special town meeting. We have 5 or 6 that year? It was the year of the special town meeting. So we had to keep coming back to rearrange funds and such, so we could utilize free cash to get those projects and things of that nature done. Generally, special town meetings aren't attended that greatly, so we try to get it done at the annual town meeting versus specials, if we can avoid it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Article 11?
Yes, once again, the estimate that we got from the city of Pittsfield for what we would have to pay for sewer treatment expenses was lower than the actual amount. So we need to raise money to pay what the actual costs were last fiscal year for the town. We always get billed for the previous fiscal year. So this year the estimate was $70,000 less than the actual cost of the service. So that's what Article 11 does. The city of Pittsfield is phasing in a new method of billing for us, and it will cost a little bit extra for 3 years, and we're in the middle of that. We're catching up with the second year now, so there will be one more year of increases. We're hoping that the estimate we got this year will be more accurate than the estimate we got last year, so that we don't have to put $70,000 in a year from now. We're hoping that it'll be considerably less. But for now, that's the amount that we did not pay that that ended up being part of the cost. So we have to authorize that at this town meeting and pay back Pittsfield for what they essentially fronted us the money for.
Questions on Article 11? Seeing none, hearing none. We're going to jump to Article 15, 12, 13, and 14. It's going to be a little maintenance warrant items. And Article 15 we want to raise for discussion. It's related to the opioid settlement stabilization fund. Mr. Hutchinson?
One of the results of the opioid crisis was that a number of companies were held to account for their part in allowing that crisis to continue unabated and even accelerate. So there are a number of companies that are paying into a fund now, and many, many cities and towns and states across the country are party to a settlement from which we get a relatively small amount of money, $1,000 or $2,000 a year, but we will be getting it for the next 15 years. And this article establishes a fund that we can put that money into. There was a gap in state law that we couldn't just assign that money to a fund. It ended up going into free cash. So we're taking the money that we've gotten so far out of free cash and putting it into the fund and authorizing all the future money that comes in to go into that fund as well. Over time, we'll have public outreach to see where we can best use that money, and staff will be involved in helping to make the decisions about what kind of programs the town can offer. And it has to be something related to opioid substance disorder. Substance use disorder.
Any questions on that article? Okay. I'm going to add Article 16. It's just capital stabilization to fund a few capital projects, a cruiser for the police department, pickup truck for the Department of Public Works, and a sidewalk and road repair paver for the Department of Public Works. Any questions on 16? In the back, just wait for the microphone, please. Mr. Logan.
Hi, I just wanted to see is Bud still here? I just wanted to see, I know that Bud had other uses for the mini paver.
Yep.
And I would love it if he could just enumerate those briefly. I know there's a couple different things that it could be used for, just so that the town could know what other benefits would be there.
Mm-hmm.
We could use that paver for pretty much every department we have. The parks, we rented one for the path we put at Pine Grove. We could use it for the other parks, so we could have pathways to the new 88 picnic tables first. Cemetery, there is walkways in the cemetery that could be repaved. In roads, it goes 6 feet wide, so we can pave patches on the road as well. Like where there's tire ruts in certain areas and certain patches, we could do with it. It goes down to a foot wide, so we can do a trench across the road if someone puts a utility in, or we repair a sewer line or something to that effect, or the water department does work. So we could use it in many different avenues around town, different ways to use it. It was kind of more of a multi-purpose for most of the departments were, under our control, I guess.
Great. Another question in the back?
Yes. I spoke to this last week in terms of the cost, repair, and maintenance of the machine, and as I understood, it was for sidewalks initially. And I also spoke to the notion of comparative advantage, where the machine requires some good amount of skill, several operators. And I just want to know if it's a wise purchase, if indeed it was for sidewalks, that we have to purchase this now if we're looking to concrete.
I mean, yeah, obviously we're going to have someone trained to run the machine, and we'll be trained on the machine and maintain it. we're out patching all the time and do a lot of it by handwork, we could do a better job out there as well. And this would be able to do the sidewalks as well, like we were saying.
This comment is actually not coming from a financial, well, it is to some degree, but it's coming from a citizen in the town, not from the finance committee. When it comes to a piece of equipment like this, I've always advocated for our highway. Many of you may know that I formerly worked for the DOT. I have to say, when it comes to repair of our highways, if we stay on top of patches, and there's a whole process that goes along with these patches, this machine will be pretty indispensable in doing patches. Now, we're not going to pave roadways, and the amount it costs to put 2 people on a road and trucks hauling material into that and then tamping it by hand seems pretty cost ineffective when you can use a piece of machinery that costs as little as $63,000 to purchase to go and do a patch of road, say, for instance, 100 feet long. If you can fix a rut in a road that's 100 feet long versus, oh, let's tear it up and have to do an entire length of road, which is 3/4 of a mile long to the tune of $3 million or $300,000, I would say that's rather cost effective. But it may not be.
I guess, Bill, what I'm saying, I don't want to belabor the point, but initially this was for a sidewalk repair, this machine. Now, if I'm understanding, now the machine can be used for lengths of asphalt repair for a road? Because that wasn't my initial understanding why this machine was originally on the docket for purchase.
The reason the machine ended up on there, if it was only for sidewalks, I can assure you it probably wouldn't have been there. Because kind of circling back to our sidewalk question, that is very one-dimensional, and in all towns you need to be multi-dimensional. That's the whole case behind a piece of equipment. I've talked to many road superintendents, and all of them would like to have a machine of that nature, drag box pavers, what they do is they call it a sidewalk paver because it can go down narrow enough to do a sidewalk. It's the only reason it gets that name. A regular paver will only come down to 6 feet, a full on highway paver. These will go from 6 feet to, I believe it's 1 foot, correct, Bud? So when it comes down to a piece of equipment of that nature, when they put a patch in, the patch will fit the way it's supposed to fit. When they tamp it down, it'll be tamped into place. Unlike driving along East Street in the city of Pittsfield, where they won't bother to do that, even though they have that kind of equipment. That's what happens to a road if you don't do good quality patches. I don't know how many of you have driven across East Street in Pittsfield, but it's pretty painful to do at any stretch of the imagination. A piece of equipment of that nature. Part of the problem that we're having with roadways today is they have a tendency to unravel on us. There's a host of reasons for that, many of it speculation as to why that happens. And a small piece of equipment where you're not tying up traffic for lengthy periods of time can be very cost effective and beneficial. In some cases, I can vouch for this, traffic safety costs more than the actual project itself. I can vouch for that on a lot of fronts.
Great. Thank you for that discussion. Ms. Rose? Sure. Oh, go right ahead. You're recognized.
Okay, thank you. So when we became a green community, Massachusetts Green Communities, we passed a bylaw that we would purchase energy efficient vehicles whenever, a policy for the town. So I'm just wondering about the pickup truck and the cruiser, if those things are complying with our bylaw that we agreed to purchase high efficiency.
I think the bylaw
energy efficient vehicles.
is consideration, but not required.
And EV vehicles have been considered by the, I know, police chief specifically, and they're not in favor of EV vehicles because of a lot of other situations around EV vehicles for that type of response and that type of vehicle. The highway, I can't speak to the highway. I haven't talked to Bud about specifically. But Bud, do you have a comment on EV for the truck?
There's nothing available for what that truck, that's not just a pickup, that's a one-ton dump truck, so there's nothing available for that right now.
Little truck.
No, I was thinking more hybrid. I wasn't really thinking that police were going to get an EV, but maybe there's a hybrid or
Yeah,
something.
it's certainly considered as we're looking at things, but not required.
So you read the policy and it says it's optional?
Sorry?
The policy, I don't recall that the policy.
I can't recall specifically what the policy is, but I know the discussion has happened about EV vehicles as they're going through the capital process with Finance Committee and the board, and the chief is not in favor of EV vehicles for a cruiser, for a lot of specific reasons.
Are we buying any energy efficient vehicles, or are we just abandoning the policy? I'm just curious.
Well, we're not going to have a cruiser that can't operate in the winter months in Dalton with an EV cruiser. The chief is not in favor of that, and the board supports her conclusion, based upon the research she did.
Look at those things. It does require that we buy those things. And so apparently they've been looked at. I'm sorry.
I would have to say I've been in touch with the state police. And the state police are presently using, they do have some full electric vehicles. Full electric vehicles for an operation like ours are pretty impossible to use. It's just the nature of what we do. But if in the case of state police, many times they're down in like the Boston area, small areas, so they can work better with it. But the one thing that has come a long ways, and they are using many of them out here, out in the western part of the state, is the hybrid vehicles. And they're hybrid electric vehicles. They're not simply hybrid, it shuts the engine off when you get to a stoplight. It's literally an electric vehicle. And quite frankly, I would advocate that we begin to take a long look at those, considering, I suppose, if the state police can manage to figure out how to use it in the size of that organization, I would have to say that we should start very seriously looking at them, not just brushing them aside.
And they are considered, but they're not being supported at the moment. Okay. Article 19, we kind of touched on it a few through this conversation, but one thing I'd like to point out just for awareness is that the select board a few months ago supported this idea about creating a fund, and this is under, again, Article 19, under the town manager's office, provide seed money to assist residents with condemned houses. We've had a number of houses, I think 5, but not a number, but that's a good number for a small town, in which the houses have to be condemned for whatever the case is. And sometimes you hear very sad personal stories. One particular owner was a veteran. These are lifelong residents of Dalton. And so the question comes up whether or not they can fund the necessary cleanup of their homes so their homes do not get condemned. So the idea from the select board was to create a fund in which that can be tapped into to help with a cleanup, and the mechanics of that would be worked out by our town manager, our town accountant, and our Board of Health agent, whether or not there's, for example, if somebody needs $5,000 out of the fund, there's a lien on the home until they sell it, we recoup the $5,000, but that resident now is in a nice, their home is safe, not only for themselves, but also for first responders, et cetera, rather than getting through housing court and condemn someone's house who's been a lifelong resident of Dalton. So that's the general idea of that particular line item. And you can see the list of other things under Article 19, so open up that for questions. Dave, okay, who has a microphone now? Alyssa? All right, come on over to David first, and then Ms. Rose.
We to understand that all of those projects listed here, 1 through 8, and then the other ones, they're allocated to the committees, are going to be completed by the end of this year?
Bring the mic right up, I can't hear you.
Are we to understand that all of these projects are going to be completed by the end of fiscal '25? All the projects listed are they're asking for funds?
Are they going to be implemented and completed in FY '25?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
I would not make that representation. That's not what this funding is designed to do. Once town meeting funds a project, the funding does remain in place and available until the project is completed. I would imagine some of these might take a longer time. Obviously, we can't do all of them at once, so there's a question of,
Okay, are grants included in this budget? Potential grants? I know town hall and there's some other green committee things that could happen with town hall and some of these other projects. Are those incorporated into these numbers?
wherever there are chances of using grant money, we can apply for them and then not use the money that was approved at town meeting.
And then what happens to those funds that aren't used?
That would return to free cash.
So how does this town establish some accountability for these projects and when they're going to be done? Can we see project timelines for these, when we expect the cash to go out and when they will be completed? Specifically the Orchard Road project, when is that going to start and complete? And is there any calendar involved with any of these projects?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all of that, but the funding becomes available July 1st. It can be used until it runs out. Again, these are the responsibility for managing these expenditures is in the department that's represented here.
Are there project plans for each of these projects that are established within this request? Is there a timeline for the expenditures to be expended and for the project to be complete?
There aren't specific timelines for any of these. These are ones that people believe that we can tackle in FY25.
It will be very useful to see some kind of a project plan or a calendar that shows when these projects are expected to come online, when the funding is going to be required, and when they are potentially going to be complete.
Yeah, I kind of hear what your concern is. When it comes down to these projects, sometimes they take a little longer to accomplish, but one of the important things that needs to be understood is that when this money is approved by the town's people, that is the only reason that money can be used. It can't be used it can't be pushed around and used other places.
But you just told me it could be.
Well, it has to go back.
Well,
that money has to go back to free cash, and then it can be used for another purpose off in the future somewhere.
So
that's why, one of the reasons why.
I'm just trying to figure out, when we come back here next year and look at this list of projects, how do we establish some accountability to the town administrator that these projects have gone forward, that this money has been expended properly, and how do we as town residents establish accountability or a score sheet on how you guys are doing versus what you said you were going to do?
Again, every department head who's listed here is responsible for the projects listed under their.
But how do I or any of these people here gain an understanding of? You said you were going to put a swap shop shed up with $10,000. How do I know when is it going to happen? When is that money going to be spent? And how do I grade you at the end of the year? You get an A or B or a C or a D on that project?
Yeah,
not you specifically, town administration.
I'm sure we all wish that the timelines for each of these individual projects were clear.
But you're the administrators, and you're. And I'm not saying there's not allowance for slipping and sliding, but we need to understand what's going on. It seems like every year there's this, without any context, there is a request to move free cash from someplace to someplace else, and there is never any accountability for that coming back. Where is this money coming from? Where is it going? Where is it being spent? It's just this kind of slush fund. I'm sorry, it's this slush fund that moves back and forth that's where nobody is accountable, or it's almost impossible for a regular townsperson to figure out what the hell is going on. Sorry.
One of the things that we could do that actually gives me an idea is to stress to town departments to cover in their reports to the town, in the annual town report, the results of the spending that took place in that year, for that year's fiscal year.
I'm sorry, but what could be useful is just to be able to see each project individually outlined with a proposed timeline and expenditure, a guess on the expenditures, when that's going to happen, so that when I come back in the year and I look at the town garage doors that are in there, were they done are they finished? When were they finished? When did the money go out? And how much did you actually spend versus what you said you were going to spend? So that I can put a grade on this thing. This is an A, this is a B, this is a C. And then when I come back in the year, I can look at these 15 projects and say, you didn't do anything, or you completed everything, and yeah, and good job, everybody. Or none of these projects are complete, and this is a bunch of nonsense to even go through this process. Am I being clear, or do I? I'm trying to figure out how to build some accountability into the system, because
If I may.
all we do is push cash back and forth between years.
If I may, David, if I may
Go ahead.
respond to your question,
Go
because
ahead.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, and this is
Okay.
one of the reasons why we had the strategic planning session in the fall, is to look at what is our master plan calling for, or what are the needs of the town based upon that master plan. Anything that comes before the board on a list of projects is absolutely not going to be a wish list, but it's going to be items that should be completed within FY25 and reported out on the town report. Now, things come up and things may not get done, and that's okay. We defer those and things of that nature,
And
right?
that's understandable.
What we don't have, to your point, is basically a timeline of all the projects in town and where they're going to be completed and started, et cetera, right? That's a great idea. Now, administrative time to do that exercise is critical. That's number one. Number two is report out of that same information. So a couple of things that we could request as a board is that not only are these projects listed, for everybody that is at home and here in the audience, if you haven't already, definitely sign up for our newsletter, and we could have project updates in that newsletter. So, for example, and I'm just kind of spitballing here based upon your question, is our first newsletter post the town meeting could be, here are the projects that have been approved, and for the dollar amounts. And then Alyssa and the team can kind of track those and say, okay, department heads, then she's already doing this. Department heads, give me a report back, give me something for the town newsletter. It could be a project update. So Bud Hall has a number of things he could report out on the status of those through the town newsletter to get to that next step, because you're asking the right question. Because, okay, if we invest $500,000, how much of that can we actually achieve this fiscal year? If we can only achieve $300,000, don't ask for $500,000.
Correct.
Ask for $300,000, right? So we're not there yet in that project maturity, if you will, but I think it's a great idea that we should take back as a board and the finance committee and town administration to at least put some structure around that, because I think it's the right question to ask.
There needs to be a simple way to say, well, this is what town administrators say they were going to do this year. This is
Right.
what they actually did.
Right.
And there's no way to do that with this constant back and forth flow of free cash and movement of funds to
Right. And
reserve
then when
funds and the
something
free
comes
cash.
up, when something comes up that's unplanned, that's when we kind of tap the free cash. If it's unplanned and critical, then we have to have a town meeting, special town meeting to kind of tap in the free cash. We try not to do that, but we did it. I think it was late winter, in which we had to do it for the police fund issue, right? Because we couldn't just transfer that without a town meeting to do that transfer. So things come up to tap into that.
And those are
But
understandable.
yeah, we try to avoid that at all costs.
I'm not saying you can't do anything, you shouldn't, everything is bad,
Yeah,
but
it should truly be for rainy days kind of stuff and emergency kind of funding. So I hope that answers your question. And there's a question in the back, Tony?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the notion of composting and recycling, and also a rework of the transfer station. I'd like to read a statement which I sent to the parties mentioned herein. Of the 292.5 million tons of waste generated annually in the United States, 30 to 40% of that is compostable bio-waste. In 2019, the Environmental Protection Agency reported that of the 70 million tons of solid municipal waste, bio-waste, generated in the U.S., only 5% was composted. In a 2021 report, municipal solid waste landfills accounted for 14% of the methane gas produced in our country, the third largest emitter of methane gas emissions. Of note, methane gas has 80 times the effect on greenhouse gases of an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide. Community composting would address this ongoing pollution while producing a valuable end product, compost. Compost enriches soil, conserves water, and reduces the use of harmful fertilizers, all the while reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection 2030 Solid Waste Master Plan, mandated by law, recommends a 30% reduction in municipal solid waste by the year 2030 as compared to 2018 levels, and a 90% reduction by 2050. Pursuant to the above, the Green Dalton Committee established a subcommittee in August of 2023 to investigate community composting for our community. The subcommittee informed town officials of our undertaking and requested that we meet. The subcommittee visited community compost sites in Berkshire County and Western Massachusetts, spoke with state and local officials, and collected data and information. The subcommittee's report found two distinct community compost models, the Egremont versus the Williamstown model. The Egremont model has proven to be a cost-saving model in operation for over 10 years. The Williamstown model is just now completing its one-year pilot program, and its operation will be assumed by the Department of Public Works in July of 2024. The subcommittee submitted its findings to the Green Dalton Committee, the Select Board, the Town Manager, and the DPW Supervisor earlier this year. I'm pleased that the respective stakeholders are in favor of community composting as a positive environmental undertaking with potentially cost-saving benefits for Dalton taxpayers. Town officials have indicated that Dalton is undertaking a comprehensive review of the transfer station. However, absent any discussion or debate among the aforementioned stakeholders regarding the merits and demerits of either model, town officials have signaled their intent to pursue and implement the Williamstown model. I believe that the successful rollout of any community compost plan warrants engaging our community in an open, vigorous conversation prior to the implementation of said program. Informational and listening sessions prior to implementation will assure that our community embraces the benefits of community composting. A copy of the Green Dalton Committee's composting report can be found on the town website.
Thank you. Yes. Let's get a microphone. Oh, okay. Oh, you're prepared. You're ready. Look at that.
Prepared. I'm glad you're back at the podium. I was against the town taking over the transfer station, number one. And now I added up the figures that are on this paper, and it comes to $97,000 that we are going to put into the transfer station this year. How are we doing? Are we making money on it, or are we in debt? I'd like an answer to that, please. Thank you. And I like the composting idea. Thank you.
Bud, do you have any comment on the finances of the transfer station?
Hold on, Bud. Let's get a microphone to you.
I don't see the revenues. It goes to through the accountant. All the money part, that doesn't come to us. I just take care of the budget that I have to pay bills and such. That part is town hall, I guess we would say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
That's yikes. I have to say yikes.
Got expenses here, I don't have revenues.
I'm gonna take your question, and Alyssa, when is our next newsletter produced? Is it gonna be before town meeting?
No, it'll be after.
It'll be after? Okay, could you?
Third Wednesday.
Through the town manager to you, could you work with our town accountant to publish something about the transfer station operating fund and revenue so we can have that before town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So you're talking about the transfer station. Could somebody please detail or give more detail in terms of the engineering and design, what's looking to be done? And also speak to the recycling containers and the swap shop shed.
Bud, can you, Bud, we're going to get you a front row seat next time.
Yeah. The recycling containers we rent the ones that are at the transfer station now from Casella, those big, huge ones we dump into. It would be having our own, and it's one step closer to us being able to hire somebody else to haul, as opposed to we kind of pay a higher price at the moment for hauling. And the swap shop is kind of Tom's thing. He's been wanting the swap shop shed over there since he's been here. So it's, I think you can recycle good, like things that are good that you no longer use, you put in there and someone will come take it. Right. It's like a shed to put it in, is what that is. And then the engineering, we did that probably 3 years ago, I would say. To rebuild the transfer, because the walls are falling down around it pretty much, and the building itself is falling down. And it was to rebuild the building and the structure to make it more user-friendly, should we say. You're welcome.
And I'd like to add something or a question to that, so hold the mic for a second, Bud. And I don't know the answer to this, so that's what I'm kind of asking you on cold feet here, is that the swap shop is a great idea for a community to kind of drop off unused things, so others may want to use those. We're not planning on having people required to have a sticker to use a swap shop, are we? Is it more of a community shed? Is that the idea? Or...
I would say yes, that would be, right.
I don't think we officially made a decision on that, but I think that would be the right thing to do. And then the other is that for the community to know that when we took this over, we also reduced the sticker price for recycling only programs. I see a thumbs up back there. Is that well received? Is that model? So you don't get the full price tag, but you get to be able to reduce tag and then be able to recycle. Great. I see another thumbs up. Great. All right, high five here, Bob. We did something well. That's excellent. That's great to hear. But maybe that swap shop might be just open because it's a great community kind of gathering place too. So, but something to think about. Sorry for cold feet here, or cold question. Thank you, Bud. Any other questions on Article 9? Sorry, Cheryl, go right ahead.
Okay, a couple things. I'm trying to get them all in my head now. With respect to a swap shed, years ago, not that many years ago, but when I was looking at this, there are grants to get them from the state for free. Like we should be getting it through that, because I want to know that that's been tried or that program's been stopped. Like, why do we have to pay for that when you can get those for free from the state? That's my first question. And then I guess, I think we should, is the Green Committee taking this over as a project? Because I'd like to know if other towns that have these have, like, say, the Boy Scouts or somebody, kind of monitoring such a place. People can just kind of drop their shit. I mean, you don't want that. There has to be a, but
It's okay, it's a live
there has to
recording
be
there,
some kind of monitoring so people don't just get rid of junk and drop it in the swap shop, because you have to pay to get rid of certain things, right? So it should be something that actually could be used by somebody and not something that's really garbage and somebody just wants to drop in our swap shop.
I think the mechanics are to be determined on how to operationalize that, Bud, right? The swap shed, I think that to be determined. And Cheryl, to your question, and sorry, Ms. Hutchinson, Mr. Dorshine, if I jump in here, is that your funding question, I think we should always look for grants even if the funding is approved. I think we should just keep on shaking that grant tree. Now, the beautiful thing about town meeting is that anybody can come up and amend this article and say, we love the swap shop idea or swap shed, but we don't want to take $10,000 out of the taxpayer pocket to do it, or whatever the number is, right?
Right.
anybody can amend it. So this is kind of what's
Right.
come
I
before the
think I would
Finance
amend
Committee
it
and the
to say,
board, and that's a beautiful
know,
thing of town meeting, so.
All right, I could approve it after we've applied to get one and been declined.
Yeah,
You know,
and if
but
it's
if nobody's
declined-
going to put the energy into just,
Right,
because these
so-
are one
so
of these
what-
state things where they basically approve you as long as you
Right,
ask
so
for
we need
it.
to, you kind of like, as one of the challenges we have is that it's a great idea, community's been asking for it, I think people are shaking the grant tree, looking at opportunities, but if we want to just say we have to go after grants, we're probably going to wait another year or so for the service to be added. So it's a question to the community, would we like to do the program now or later? That's all the beauty of this kind of discussion.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to sort of piggyback maybe on what David was pointing out, which I think was astute to point out, and is there a $10,000 number? Like, did I miss somewhere where these things are itemized and prices are given for them?
It's in the motion, and it's in the motion and explanations.
Where it says the amount for each item?
Yeah, so it says transfer station, swap shop shed, $10,000.
Okay, thanks. So
Yeah.
actually, so my question is, since that already exists, do I understand that the sum of money, which is all of it added together, if that gets approved, there's no moving around the money between things? Like, okay, we approved money for 8 items and 3 get done and use up all the money. Like, is that a possibility or no?
So your
It's like
question
this
is,
much for each thing.
if I can restate your question, so let's look at the motion and explanations document, and it says for fiscal year 2025, for the Department of Public Works, the total is $259,483, and then we have 8 projects listed that
Right.
make up that number. Okay, your question is, if we decide not to do one, can we use that money for something else?
Yeah,
Mr. Hutchinson?
The answer is no.
okay then. Thank you.
Good answer.
Yeah, right answer.
Yeah, in the back, Mr. Logan, Todd?
Do I, oh,
No, you don't have to stand, it's okay, you can sit. Be comfortable.
Tony said I should stand, so I'm standing. Just a quick follow-up for the consulting that we're doing for the transfer station. Can we get an idea maybe of some highlights of the top 3 things that's trying to achieve, and then when will those objectives be then? Is it going to be like an FY26 project, or how is that? Hold on, I'm going to give him my microphone.
That would be determined when the engineers do the study. Like, we don't really know which way it's going to go yet.
So that it could be for fiscal year.
Yeah.
And what are the top 3?
Get the place safe, I guess I would say first, up to snuff. Everything needs to be updated over there.
We're having trouble hearing you, bud, way up here, so.
To get the area itself, the transfer station itself, safer than it is. It's just built on blocks, and the blocks are deteriorating.
Right, so if I can rephrase that, I think, Mr. Logan, your question of Bud is that line item 2, engineering and design of the transfer station, what are the top 3 objectives in the timeline? And I think if I'm hearing the answer correctly, Mr. Hall, is that we don't know those top 3 because the engineering study will tell us what those top 3 are.
Correct.
Correct? Okay, and then from that, so the engineering study is only $68,000, that doesn't actually implement anything, right? So then we'll get a report back and says you should make these particular changes for safety or operational efficiency or whatever the case might be. Correct? Any other questions on Article 19? Ms. Cheryl Rose, Ms. Rose.
Repainting the Who's House, is the money for the paint and volunteers will paint the Who's House, or are we actually paying professional painters? It seems like we could probably get volunteers to paint.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes, we are paying professional painters to do it. Partly because asking volunteers to work with ladders is not recommended by anybody who has to vouch for the safety of volunteers.
Don't we have insurance for stuff like that? I mean,
They're the people who most specifically do not want us to use volunteers for that purpose. I think it's a relatively low price, and I'm kind of surprised they were able to get a quote for that. But yes, we would pay someone to do that.
Okay, and we are going to pay a grant writer to, under Open Space Committee. Okay, There's stuff under Open Space Committee that I don't understand. Since I'm on the committee, I just kind of want some clarification. Provide funding for the grant application for rebuilding Walker Brook. So we're going to pay a grant writer to write the grant, so we're not actually, you're not writing the grant.
If we're going after $5 million, I would suggest a grant writer.
Yes, it would be an engineering firm.
I see.
And the engineering firm would do a number of things, including the benefit cost analysis, which is a key component to this, to the grant that would cover this project.
Why is it listed under Open Space Committee, or am I misunderstanding the way it's put there?
We can't, can you speak a little louder?
It's under Town Manager. I can't tell. It says for the Open Space Committee.
Just if you want to, the motions and explanations document is a bit clearer than I think the document.
All right. Okay. So it's in there, it's in there.
All set? Okay. Any other questions on Article 19? Mr. Joshine?
I'd like to make one comment this is kind of from the Finance Committee. I've been kind of patiently waiting for everyone to get through the other parts of this article. The Finance Committee reduced this amount. It was initially $515,023. We reduced it by $20,000 for this seed money that was proposed. And
Well, that's your amendment for the town meeting. We're not debating it tonight.
well, I
So
know,
I would withhold that amendment.
I wanted to let the townspeople know why the Finance Committee brought.
Yeah, you can speak to it at the town meeting. Yeah, we started us off with no debate on the articles.
I wasn't debating.
Anything else on Article 19? Hearing none, seeing none. I think that's all we wanted to cover, unless anybody else wants to talk about anything else on the articles. Mr. Bishop? Oh.
I'd like to ask a question. I'm not sure what article it goes under. I'm the son of a veteran, but I need to ask this question. What does the Veterans Agent do? Where is the Veterans Administration falling short? And is it typical for a town our size to have a Veterans Agent?
Mr. Hutchinson?
We certainly don't have a full-time veterans agent. We share our veterans agent with 6 other towns. The agent is headquartered in North Adams and comes to the Dalton Senior Center, I think, the first Wednesday mornings of each month. Oh, every Wednesday morning. Oh, we got upgraded. Every Wednesday morning at the Senior Center.
What do they do?
They ensure that veterans who reach out for services receive the services to which they are entitled. Oh, and the funding under that item also includes money that the town receives from the state for veterans that is distributed to veterans.
Good.
So how much are we paying?
It varies. It's one of the problems with the budget, with that particular budget line, because we don't know how many there are going to be next year. We'll find that out, I think, in July.
Well, with that, if there's no other articles anyone wishes to discuss, I do thank you all for attending this evening, and certainly reach out to us if you have questions between now and town meeting. We look forward to seeing you at town meeting. And please don't forget to register for our newsletter. You can find that information on our website. And also, just to note that our budget is separate from the fire district budget. So look at the fire district budget in their annual town meeting, which is completely separate from the town of Dalton. That is additional budget for tax purposes, et cetera, making decisions. So please, I knew you were going to ask, and I didn't even look it up. Yeah, I think it's shortly there. Do you know when that is? It's like
it's coming right up.
Yeah, check their website for more information. I just don't have that with me now. But thank you, everybody. And on our agenda, I'm going to go ahead and table the executive session.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so because we don't have the other board members? Huh?
Dan said
We're tabling it.
Call in.
No, we're going to table it. And then with that, could I have a motion to adjourn? All right, we vote May 14th for the fire district. All right, good night, Dalton, thank you.